Drones have completely transformed roof inspections, making them faster, safer, and more efficient. But here's the harsh reality. Many roofers are flying illegally, either because they don't know the rules or they simply just don't care. And that's a serious problem, not just for safety, but for liability and potential fines. That's why this video is so important. We are here to raise awareness and set the record straight. I've brought in a true expert, Vic Moss, co-founder of the Drone Service Providers Alliance. Vic has been on the front lines of drone advocacy, working with the FAA and industry leaders to promote compliance and protect the interests of licensed drone operators. So if you're a roofer using drones or thinking about adding drones to your business, you really need to hear this. We're going to be breaking down why flying legally matters, what the risks are, and if you're not following the rules, how compliance can protect your business and your reputation. So let's go ahead and jump in.
Well, thank you for the invite. I love talking about drone safety and drone regulations. I'm one of those weird folks that likes to do that. So
many roofers are tempted to fly drones without proper licensing. What are some of the most common violations you see, and what are some of the risks that are involved in it?
Well, obviously, if they're flying without a license, then that's the most common violation you're going to see. But you also have airspace issues where, there's certain places you're not supposed to fly. And I know, and I've flown roofs. We had a monster hailstorm here in Colorado about 3 or 4 years ago, and I flew a whole lot of roofs. So I definitely have experience doing it. I didn't fly them as a roofer, obviously, because I'm not a roofer. But the violations are anything from, obviously, like we just mentioned, flying without a remote pilot certificate, which is a big no-no. Violations in airspace, also a big no-no. Safety issues as well. You don't know you're not supposed to fly over people. And if something happens, then you're in trouble. So lots of different violations that come about when you're flying without the proper certificates.
What are we looking at as far as penalties that roofers could face if they are flying illegally?
Well, and the FAA really isn't your primary worry. It should be a worry, absolutely, 100%. But the way it works with the FAA is they're not a punitive agency. They're an education and safety agency. That's their calling. That's what they've been tasked with doing by Congress. So what would happen is if you get caught doing it, you'll get what we call a 3-strike rule, I think is a good way to put it in my training with the FAA safety team, which I am a volunteer for. It's basically a 3-strike rule. And the rule can be broken, which I'll explain in a minute. But the first thing you do is, if somebody turns you in, then they'll call you and say, hey, these are the rules you're supposed to follow. Please follow them. And then you have strike 1 in your little record. The second one would be if you get turned in again or whatever. You know what? We've already talked to you once. So now what we need you to do is you go here, here, and here, or someplace, usually a FSDO, Flight Standards District Office. We're going to do a little training, little remedial training. And if that doesn't work, the third strike is, here's a time that you need to come down to FSDO, bring your drone and bring your checkbook. Because that's, they figure 3 strikes, you're out. However, one of the things they like to say during training is it's sort of like driving down the highway with a broken taillight. Cop pulls you over because your brake light's out, okay? Happens sometimes. Don't know it's out, no big deal. If you're very apologetic, I didn't know, I'm sorry, definitely take care of it, you're going to probably get off with a warning or maybe a fix-it ticket. But if you just lay into the cop, don't you have anything to do? What's wrong? Are they out of donuts at the grocery store? I mean, if you go down that route, that police officer is going to find everything wrong with your car, probably run your license incorrectly a couple, 3 times on purpose. You're wasting more of your time. So if you do get a call from the FAA, definitely you want to reach out to them and answer back to them. The bigger issue, if you want to go there now, is insurance. Every roofer carries insurance, or they should. I'm assuming they do. If they're in business, they certainly do. If they work for the insurance companies, they certainly do. And there are people inside insurance companies whose sole job is to figure out how to deny claims. And if you're flying a drone illegally and an issue happens, guess who's not going to pay your insurance? Or guess whose insurance is not going to pay on your claim? And so that you're opening up yourself to liability. If you're a subcontractor for a roofing company, then you're opening up your company to liability. Not only will that be an issue, but if you, let's say, worst case scenario, you hit a tree, you come down and you're doing this $1 million home and it comes down and lands right on top of the hood of their Ferrari, their antique Ferrari, right? Let's talk worst case scenario. You're buying a Ferrari. If you're at least very, very, at least the hood for it. And I don't know about you, I've never checked prices on the hood of a Ferrari, but I'm thinking it's probably a little more than a couple $100.
That is actually really interesting. I never even thought about that portion of it, because that's been the one big thing when I talk to roofing companies is, well, can you show me examples of where big fines have been issued? And there aren't a lot of
No, there
industry
aren't a lot.
specific issues, but that actually opens up a whole different can of worms of, yes,
Right.
there's not public fines available and things like that. However, those insurance denials, that makes a ton of sense. And
Huge.
as a roofer, you should be extremely aware of any sort of insurance denial issues. So that shouldn't
Uh-huh.
even be
Uh-huh.
that much of a stretch of the imagination. So that's
No, it's
actually
not.
really, really interesting. I actually love that example. And I have a really good feeling I'll be using that quite often when I do
As you
have these
should. As you
conversations. Yeah,
should.
that makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense.
Mhm.
So, okay, that does make a lot of sense. So, as far as like the certification itself, so like
Uh-huh.
what is the essential reason? Why should someone go out there and get a Part 107?
Because that's the law. I mean, let's break it down to the basics here. In 2000, I think 2012, so gosh, 13 years ago, holy moly, the Congress gave the FAA, say, hey, y'all need to come up with some rules for drones. Maybe it was 2014. But it's like, okay, y'all need, drones are coming on the scene, folks, and you need rules. So they told the FAA make some rules. So they came out in 2016 with what's called Part 107, 14 CFR 107. And those are, contrary to popular belief, those are not the commercial rules for drones. Those are the default rules for drones. So if you want to fly in the national airspace, which is basically when it comes to drones from the ground up, I think the term that FAA uses is from the blade of grass up, you need to be trained and you need to have the right training, or you need to have the right certification, which is the 107 remote pilot certificate. There are exceptions to flying under that. There's a law enforcement stuff like that. We're not going to talk about that. But the exception actually is called the exception to 107. You can fly as a hobbyist. But if you look at the hobby rules, and that is 49 USC 44809, for those nerds like me who want to know about it, it's called the exception for limited recreational operation of unmanned aircraft. And that's the title of the section. And you have to fly it under 8, to qualify, you have to be flying under 8 different criteria. And the very, very, very first one is aircraft is flown strictly for recreational purposes. Yeah, it's fun to fly a drone as a roofer, but guess what? It ain't recreational. Absolutely not. So you're automatically flying without a remote pilot certificate. So right off the bat, you're illegal. So that's why you should do it, to stay legal. And the training involved, you have to get a certificate. I think it's $175 right now to get the certificate, but you need the training. And there are schools out there. I personally, I like Pilot Institute. They're a great, great, great school. They've done more remote pilot certificates and trust certificates, for that matter, than anybody else. But once you get that, you take the test, you're legal. You're legal, and you don't have to worry about the FAA, or worse, your insurance company going, "Hey, come here, let's talk."
Makes sense. Yeah. So, but just to be clear, though, if I'm just doing marketing, it's okay, right?
No, you're not flying recreationally. That's the
No,
key.
I hear
That's the
this a lot,
key.
though. No, I'm just flying it because I'm doing YouTube videos. Is that okay?
No. Well, with YouTube, it's a little bit of a rabbit trail. But YouTube, if you just, okay, I love to use the train enthusiast. I have a friend who's a train freak, and he actually is a 107 as well. But even if he wasn't, train freaks love to go out. And if you're a train freak, that's not a derogatory term. I mean it. They love to go out and take pictures and videos of trains and share them on the YouTube channel for other train freaks. That's just recreational. That's fun. If you're reviewing drones, if, let's say, you're a vacation or you're a travel expert, and your channel's about travel, and you're using drones to add content to your channel, that's then not recreational. So just because you're using social media doesn't mean that it is required to have a 107. But if it's recreational, you're okay. And anything outside of recreational, no, you can't post it on social media without a 107.
Oh, that makes total sense. And we get that conversation all the time. It's like, oh, it's just marketing. It's just a roof inspection. We're just looking at the damage. Yada yada yada. It's one of those things they justify it as like gray area. It's not gray.
There is no gray. There is, and I'm a black and white guy, when it comes to regulations, but sometimes there's absolutely gray, which we won't talk about because there are some regulations that are gray. 107, it's black and it's white, and there is no gray. It's either recreational or it's not.
Yep.
So
exactly.
there is no gray. And we also hear, I'm sure you've heard it too. It's like, well, I'm just doing it as part of my job. I'm not getting paid to fly. Again, recreational, not. So yeah, 100% requirement of a remote pilot certificate.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some of the biggest safety concerns if you're flying a drone by an untrained operator? What are some of the biggest concerns?
Oh, golly. Safety, obviously, is the biggest concern. If you haven't studied for your remote pilot certificate, there's a good chance you're not a very good pilot. And so you've got things like, again, I flew a ton of roofs here in Colorado and Denver. and trees, power lines. Not seeing where the drone is another good one. And you run into things and not being able to see what's going on, or you don't understand that you need to set your home point before you take off. And all of a sudden you're in the air and it says home point set. And all of a sudden you can't come home under return to home conditions. It just sits there and goes and hovers like, and it waits till the battery goes out. But the fact that you don't know which way to fly, and that sounds kind of weird, but let me explain. When I'm training, and I do some training, when I tell somebody to launch or land, you always want to face the drone away from you. Because when you're flying and facing towards you, your sticks are backwards. So left is right, right is left, front is back, and back is front. So if something happens and you're going, I need to go backwards real quick, and you push it forwards real quick, and it runs into you, or runs into a kid, even worse. Oh, cool drone. They come running up. Dog comes running up. So I always tell people to take off and land facing away from you. So it is a training issue. You need to make sure what's going on. You need to know what happens if there's an airplane near you, a helicopter, actually, especially because they do fly fairly low sometimes. So the biggest thing is you just don't know how to fly. You don't know what to do if something goes wrong. Drones are incredibly easy to fly, but it's incredibly easy for them to get away from you pretty quickly as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that we like to do with roofing companies is actually pull up a loft and show them the sectional. And when you do that, a lot of roofing companies are really like, there's a lot of airports. Yeah, no, we're aware of this. And if you don't know what you're looking for, there are a lot of times that they're just thinking like, oh, it's just a drone. And
Oops.
Yeah, no big deal. And especially when you add in things like remote ID and things like that, like it's getting, I mean, if you want to talk about remote ID a little bit about what that is and why that's
sure.
Yeah, why not? Right.
Remote ID was mandated by Congress in the 2018 Reauthorization Act. I can't remember, 2020. Anyway, whichever one it was. And it's basically an electronic license plate in the sky. So every drone you buy nowadays already has remote ID built in, unless you're flying one of the small ones, which you shouldn't be anyway for roofers, because then the wind blows up and go, bye-bye, drone. And, it's if somebody shows up and they have an app on a phone, it's super simple to get the apps, especially for the Android type phones, and cops will as well. They can find you. They pull up and go, oh, look, there's the drone and there's Bob or Susie who's flying the drone. Let's go talk to them. And they find out what you're doing. And if you're legal, no big deal. But they can find you pretty easily nowadays with the drones that you buy.
Yep, absolutely. And then that's the other thing. It's like you understand they know you're there. Like this is not something you're just like all stealthily doing your thing. Like it's broadcasted. This is by design. And so it's really fascinating to us on having these conversations on people think they can just do it and goes under the radar, but it's
right.
And I know Oklahoma City specifically, and that's where we're based out of. I know there's a lot of FAA like focus out here, and so there's a lot of.
You've got a big office in OKC. Yep,
we definitely
big FAA
do.
office.
So, and there's also the counter UAS program out here and things like that. Especially Oklahoma City, I just can't stress enough. This is not the place to be trying to do stuff like that. So, really interesting to me. But awesome. So let's talk about DSPA specifically, because I think that program is phenomenal. What you guys are doing out there is awesome. So do you mind giving me a little bit of like a quick elevator pitch of what DSPA is so people can know?
I've never heard it called that before. I like that.
Really? I've always called it that. DSPA. That's always what I've heard it as.
DSPA. I love it. I'm going to start calling it DSPA. I love it. So Drone Service Providers Alliance, Kenji Sugahara and I started this, I think, in 2020. It's been a while, surprisingly. And what we do is there's no true one place for commercial drone pilots in the United States to have a voice when it comes to regulation and that type of stuff. So we've done everything from, I've literally worked in Washington, D.C. I've talked with the legislators in D.C. I'm talking about some of the anti-China stuff or other regulations when it comes to the FAA Reauthorization Act. And we've done things as little as, I don't want to say as little because it's just as important, but we've had meetings with local drone pilots who there's a city that is trying to pass drone regulations that aren't what they're supposed to be doing. And so we sit down and we'll meet with local drone pilots on Zoom, because I'm based in Denver. Kenji's based in Washington State. I'm sorry, Oregon. Same thing, just spelled differently. Sorry, Kenji. And say, okay, it's okay to be nervous when you go up. And we talk about how to go before city council and testify. So we kind of run the gamut about what we do there. And that's kind of what we do. There was no voice for that. And Kenji and I both were at that point. We're already, industry leaders. I mean, I kind of hate saying that, but we already had the industry contacts. We both knew the industry incredibly well. And so one thing led to another, and we started it.
Yeah, no, that's phenomenal. I know I've sent you guys. I mean, I say leads, more like contacts of people
Uh-huh.
who, oh, hey, my drone got shot down, or
Yep.
things like that, or any sort of thing. We're always really big about promoting the advocacy of what you guys are doing for
Well,
drone
appreciate
pilots to
that.
make sure it's
Yep.
done correctly. So I'm a huge supporter of it, and I always love seeing you guys do everything. I mean, you guys are making some massive changes across
We're
the industry.
trying. We're trying. And it's a
Well,
lot of people in the industry. I want to say that there's a lot of people doing this, and DSPA and DAA, which is another organization I'm part of, we're sort of like the catalyst for it, but without the support of everybody else in the industry, we can't do anything. So it's definitely an industry-wide way to do things, and there's a lot of credit goes to a lot of people. But thank you.
awesome. Yeah, it's phenomenal. So let's get back to the roofing side as
Mhm.
far as one of the arguments that I get a lot from roofing companies is that hiring a pilot is too expensive. So how can we shift that mindset and see it more of like a compliancy and investment, just
Mhm.
like an unnecessary expense?
Right, right. No, if you're looking at a drone pilot as an expense, you're thinking of it wrong. It should not be an expense line on your profit and loss. That's just the wrong way to look at it. If you're worried about hiring one, pay for your adjusters to get their license, or pay for your salespeople to get their license. It's super cheap. I mean, literally, it's super cheap. And you can use something like a DJI Mini, less than $1,000 for that drone, and that includes extra batteries and the whole 9 yards. So the best way to become compliant is obviously to get your people certificated. But to hire somebody to do it, if you're a roofing company and you're in sales, that shouldn't be part of the consideration of the cost of what you're doing business, because it's a safety issue as well. Back to liability. We keep kind of circling back to liability. But, I like to say you can't fall off of something you're not on. It's literally impossible to fall off a roof if you're not on the roof. So, why go through the brain damage, and why, put the ladders up, and, don't secure the ladders right on top of the truck and they fall off. I mean, there's all kinds of different things that can go wrong. Just to become compliant with a drone, your life's going to be easier. Your clients, believe it or not, are going to think it's pretty stinking cool to have somebody. Oh, no, you're going to get up? No, I'm not going to get up. Look, we're gonna put the drone out, and they'll come out and watch, and they can watch over your shoulder if they want to. So yeah, just become compliant. It's a safety issue, it's a regulatory issue, and it's a liability issue. And I think liability I should have said first.
No, absolutely. And that's actually really funny. You said that about the homeowners thinking it's cool.
Yes,
That's the
yeah,
thing that we do all the time. And one of the things I always teach my guys is to go out there. We go to a house, we will knock on all the neighbors' doors right next
that's
to
not
it.
a bad idea. Exactly.
And it's not and a lot of people are like, oh, it's door knocking. No, whole different thing, because this is literally what we tell them. Hey, just letting you know I'm flying a drone. Don't shoot it down. Don't call the cops. I'm flying it for Susie. Just so you're aware.
Right.
And that's it. There's no call to
Uh-huh.
action. I'm not trying to promote your business, et cetera. It's
Right.
just simply just spreading awareness. This is
Mhm.
happening. But this is where it gets cool though. People are naturally curious, right? And so usually what happens is those homeowners are going to say, oh, what are you doing with Susie? What's going on? Who are
Exactly.
you? Right. And it opens those conversations.
Mhm.
And I hate to like talk about like door knocking and things like that, but like it is absolutely, we have so much evidence
Mhm.
that having
Mhm.
success as a
Yep.
canvassing tool
Yep.
just for lead generation, et cetera. So like
Right.
drones are cool. Homeowners get that extra value from having a drone. And we're a big fan of the Mavic 3 series just because it
Oh, I
has
love
four
my
three.
Mavic. Right there.
Oh yeah, right. They're awesome. And you can see all the individual granules and things like it adds extra quality to what you're doing. It's just, if you're going to do it right. And I think that
Exactly.
it should be one of those things that's integrated into a roofing company. And that's why we really focus and really shifted, because this industry greatly is underutilizing these phenomenal tools. And the ones that are doing it are just not simply doing it enough or with the right quality. So
Right.
it's extremely underutilized for where it should be. So, and
Oh,
that's where we're at.
100%. And I would though, you say you go knock and say, don't shoot it down, don't call it. I wouldn't even go there. I would just say, hey, just let you know so you don't worry about it. This is what I'm doing. And
Sure.
the other thing I would do is, if you're a roofing company, is have cards. Like, and don't say, here's a card. This is what I'm doing. You say, this is, hey, this is what I'm doing. And if they say something, oh, here's a card if you have any questions. And yeah, like you said, it's a great sales tool. I'm not a proponent of knocking on doors for a lot of stuff. It just would be simply because when I fly, sometimes there's 100 houses I'm gonna be flying over. It's like, I'm not doing that. But for a roofer, because you're going to be low, you're going to be over somebody's house because you know you need that angle. You're going to be over their neighbors, going to be over their neighbors behind. But knock on the doors, definitely 100%. And the other thing I would say, and this is what I do, is wear high vis vests. So you want to wear an orange or green vest, and while you're doing it, get a custom one for all your crew, and just says, you know, drone pilot with your logo of your company or name of your company and a phone number on it, because you're a walking, talking billboard at that point. And if you are wearing a vest and the cops show up, you look professional, because people will call the cops on you sometimes. It happens. People don't understand what you're doing. But if you're sitting in your car and flying and hiding in your car and the cops show up, it ain't going to look good. So stand outside, a high vis vest, and you look professional. That's the key, is the professionalism.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know being a drone pilot, we have law enforcement interaction all the time. If you're ever out in any sort of public space flying a drone, people are going to have curiosity. I've had so many times, especially coming from telecom and things like that, just officers just showing up, just say, "Hey, what's going on? We got a call or something." So very, very common. Just have your stuff
Sure.
together and just act professional and just be safe about it, right? It's all about
Right.
safety and just being compliant, just doing things right. And that's such an important, just a really
Mhm.
important like focus here is just doing things the right way. Not only is the right thing to do, but it's also, I mean, like the liability and things like that. Like
Yes.
you can leverage these tools more appropriately if you are doing the right thing. So it just it
Correct.
just makes sense. It really does.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, as far as like, are there any sort of like upcoming regulatory changes or things like
Yeah, a
that
few.
people be aware of?
Yes, a few. One thing we're going to see, hopefully this, you know, we're in January right now, 2025, and we're supposed to maybe this month, possibly next month, is get a notice of proposed rulemaking for Part 108. We don't know if it's going to be called Part 108 or not yet, but that's for the BV loss rule, so beyond visual line of sight. And that's another thing that we see violated all the time. You got to keep your drone in sight. It shouldn't affect roofers that much unless you're canvassing a neighborhood by mapping a neighborhood, then it will. But that's going to be the biggest rule change coming up this year. Nothing else really is in the pipeline for changes. We just had last year had the new FAA Reauthorization Act, and that's good for 4 years. And that's usually what precipitates the big changes. So there's nothing really coming down the pipeline except the beyond visual line of sight at this point.
Awesome. And then as far as the other thing I want to talk about as well is like any advice for a roofer who wants to start using drones.
Get certificated, please, 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 please. And that's me talking as an FAA safety team member. By the way, I got to make sure people understand I don't speak for the FAA. I'm speaking from experience with my dealings with people who have violated FAA regulation. Get certificated. It's going to save you a hassle. Cops do know to look for your remote pilot certificate and your ID. By the way, you have to show them both if they do show up. And if you don't have it, they're going to report you to FSDO. And it's just do it. I mean, really, it's inexpensive. It's a great investment in your company as well, just simply because you're not going to have people falling off the roof. Your insurance rates are probably going to come down. So it could even be a financial wash, to be quite honest. If once your insurance company realizes that you're flying drones, instead of having people on a roof, you've got a 2-story roof with a 45-degree pitch. I don't want to be on that. I'm a weenie though. I don't like being on roofs anyway. I've got a 2-story roof. And when I clean the gutters, I was like, I don't want to be here anymore.
Yep.
So it's huge liability issue. And I know I keep harping on that, but it is so true. And it could be a wash for companies because your insurance. But speaking of insurance, you got to make sure that you are your insurance company will also cover drones. Some will not. So that's something you do need to look into when you decide to make the leap into drones.
Yeah,
and make sure if
absolutely.
you're hiring a pilot that they're insured. That's another thing you want to make sure. And ask for a COI, ask for a certificate of insurance.
Yep. Get that Part 107, get that COI, and make sure it's
Yep.
current, et cetera. Those are all things you definitely
currency
have
as well.
Yes, it's huge. And yeah, it's absolutely. And the risk reduction is a huge value
Major.
here. I know, I think I saw roofing. They, what was the stats? I think it's like 26 or 28 out of 100 a year, or 100,000 actually die from falls a year in the roofing industry.
Wow.
It's substantial. And so there's a huge liability on that side.
Mm-hmm.
And then the efficiency, like the absolute efficiency of how many houses that you can do will impact your bottom line. And it does make sense. And we have so much data to support that. It just makes sense legally. It makes sense a risk reduction. It makes sense the cost efficiency side. It just makes sense. So
Yep.
yeah, I really do appreciate that.
Sure.
As far as someone who has questions, right, where would they go?
Oh, the best place to go is the FAA, UAS help at FAA.gov. Literally, those guys, and I spoke with them already this morning. They're a great group of guys that will get back to you right away. And if you have a question about drones, reach out, UAS help at FAA.gov. They have an 800 number too, but I can never remember what it is, or an 888 number, one of the two. But the quickest way really is to get in touch with them via email. They'll shoot you an email right back, usually within minutes. And there's your question answered. If you have a new drone, I'm going to put a plug in here for Pilot Institute because I love Pilot Institute. I don't make any money on this. So
Me too. I love them. I do.
if you get a new drone, go to pilotinstitute.com and they have what's called deep dives. They're videos which are free. And I know roofers like that word a lot, as does pretty much every industry in the world. And they have different deep dive videos about different drones. So you get yourself a Mavic 4. There's no Mavic 4 yet. You get yourself a Mini 4. Sorry, that's what I was trying to say. Or a Mavic 4 in a few months. Mavic 3, whatever. You can go there and they'll have a deep dive specific to that drone. And you can learn everything you need to know about how to fly that drone, how to fly that drone safely. So that's the way to do it. And efficiency, real quick. You mentioned efficiency just a second ago. And this was 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I think. I can't remember now. If you're in the roofing industry, you know when we had that mess here in Colorado. At the time, it was the most expensive hailstorm in history. I was flying 10 to 12 roofs a day, 15 minutes from the time I pull up to the time I'm packing up. And you can't do a roof that it takes you that long to get your ladder set up, and you get the high res imagery and you can take it back and you look at it and you can circle all the damages. The efficiency is huge. I didn't even think of that until you said it. It's the stuff you can do. As a roofer, how many roofs can you inspect? Especially a big roof. I mean, you can, you inspect the fascia, you can inspect the stuff around, you can have everything. So it's huge efficiency wise.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're focusing on right now is we have a storm response team, and it's basically a team of drone pilots that will travel different parts of the country and respond to hail and work with those local roofing companies. So that's one of the things that we're building out. So the efficiency side is absolutely very valuable. So no, that is awesome. And thank you so much for that. I really do appreciate it. So if they want to get in touch with DSPA or you, or DSPA, whatever. I like DSPA. Probably gonna say.
I love it.
If they do want to learn more about DSPA or what you guys are doing out there, how would they be able to get a hold of you guys?
You can go to our website, so dspalliance.org. You can email me, Vic at dspalliance.org. Vic is VIC. There's no K in the name Vic. It's a pet peeve of mine. Sorry. Go to Starbucks, VICK. Anyway, it's Vic, VIC at dspalliance.org. And yeah, definitely love helping people out. And let me know. But if you have a question about regulations, really seriously, reach out to the UAS Help Center at the FAA. They are great people. UAS help at FAA.gov.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Vic. I do appreciate the conversation. Sure. I really do hope that everyone who's watching this was able to learn something of value here and just understand the power that these things can have in your huge organization if you're doing it the right way. And I think that's very, very, very important to understand that, they are a phenomenal tool, but they also, with great power comes great responsibility.
Great responsibility. Spider-Man's exactly.
I'm going to go with it. So I think you have great power with these tools, but you also have to do it correctly. And I think as long as you're doing it, I think there's huge potential. So thank you so much, my friend. I do appreciate it.
Sure. Absolutely. Good luck.